Hi, everyone. I'm Meredith with Conversations with Friends on the Brahma Kumari's meditation site. And I want to tell you that a few weeks ago, I attended a healing extravaganza in Little Haiti. And they had everything there, from acupuncture, group acupuncture, to mandala painting, to meditation. And our head of our center here in Miami, Veronica, she actually did some of the meditations. There was lots to do, and it was just a beautiful gathering of people. So anyway, at the very end, this is the part I want to focus on here. At the very end, the head of the one of the organizers, Dan Neville Atchison, he got up and he said, "Please stay till the finale. Please stay." And I was, sometimes at the end of the day, it's like, well, I'm a little tired. He goes, "It's going to be amazing." So I stayed. Okay. And that's where my guest comes in today, because Jared Bistrong is a healer. His whole organization has been about drumming and healing. And he put on this amazing, amazing event. But it wasn't just organizing an event. It was, we got to participate by lying there and really feeling something that I haven't felt in a long time. I mean, I meditate, and I'm very into meditation. This is quite different. So that's why he's here to describe what happens and what he's been doing. And I just want to say that he is the founder of the South Beach Sound Healing Orchestra and the Miami Sound Institute. So welcome, Jared. I am thrilled to have you, because it's not like I read about you and I want to learn about this. I do want to learn about it, but I did experience it. So for those who don't really know what sound healing is, could you just give us a bit of an idea of what it's all about?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. First of all, it's wonderful. I love getting a chance to come and talk about anything that has to do with sound healing. And especially because, today the term sound healing is thrown around so much, and you do hear it a lot. And so if you've never actually experienced sound healing and you hear the word sound healing, you could be a little bit confused. You might see some pictures of, somebody dressed in some nice garb on social media with some pretty instruments and still not really know what's happening. And so sound healing is basically, using sound to relax the body and really release and let go of things. Sometimes, go on a very profound journey. So, I mean, we know that sound and music obviously has an impact on the body. Everybody loves music and everybody loves sound. Sound healing is different than a musical performance in the sense that the context is different, right? It has different intentions, and usually during a sound healing session, participants are not watching, so there's not a performance, right? So everybody's laying down, your eyes are closed. If you're inside, the place is dark, and so it is more of an inward journey, right? It's more of about the participant as opposed to being the focus being on the performer. Right?
It's not about the show. It is a show. It feels like you're in a show, but it's not about the show. It's really about, it's interesting you say this, because actually my first spiritual experience that I can remember wasn't with sound, it was music. And I had an experience over 30 something years ago, which did radically change my life. I ended up at the meditation center some months later as a result of that experience. And it did have to do with, why I'm bringing this up is it had to do with ancient music. It was the sound of some ancient music.
Sure.
And I know what you do, especially with the drumming, and you have other instruments, right? But does it have to have a feeling of something really almost ancient from way back to do something to the soul?
Well, I mean, so one of the issues that, we're dealing with as modern humans is the inundation of technology, right? And specifically, electronics. And so there is a sound and a vibration and a frequency that comes from all of the gadgets and things that we surround ourselves with on a daily basis. And so our sounds that even now I'm listening to you. I mean, just to think about this, I have these little ear pods in my ear. There's some kind of weird Bluetooth technology. Who knows what that is? It's connecting with my computer, which is then shooting out into space, hitting some satellites, going around, and then hitting you. And then all of this is then being broadcast. I mean, it's hard to even wrap our minds around it. So there's a few layers removed, right? And so most of the sound that we're receiving on a daily basis between our phones, our TVs, our cars, our appliances, and just the world at large are just unnatural and very dissonant sounds, right? They're not congruent. They're disconnected from nature, right? So that's what we're dealing with today. And so if you think about the type of sounds that a human being would have heard in their entire life from birth to death, going back, let's say 50 or 100 years or throughout time, the sounds that a human would have come into touch with for 99% of our history would have been the natural sounds of nature. Would have had a certain vibrational frequency and a flow that matched that person's life and that matched the ecosystem that person was living in. Yes. And so we're just maybe 50 years, 100 years removed from this. And so now we're literally, our bodies are out of tune just from the sounds that are happening in our environment, and the kind of there's no flow in those sounds. It's like, I mean, if you could listen to what electricity sounds like, it's not a stable frequency, right? And none of our other sounds are. And so then we throw them all together. It's such a hodgepodge. So when you said you're listening to music and those instruments, so this really comes down to listening to an instrument in person, right? An instrument, and hearing that instrument and feeling the actual vibrational frequencies that are in that space that are coming from that instrument have an impact on our body and put our body into more of a natural flow and state, right? So I like to think of sound healing instruments, if you look at them, and then of course there's probably hundreds, but those that are the best are those that are the rawest and that are of the earth. I consider them to be earth tone instruments because they create sounds that are very earthy in nature. And that's, for me, this is where the healing kind of comes from, and also the why, because we are just disconnected from nature these days. We are disconnected from our sunrises and our sunsets and the sounds of the seasons, right? All of that. And so sound healing is kind of filling that void. That's how I see it. So the sound healing sessions that I, kind of put on and people experience, they will, I always get the feedback that, I felt like I was, in a forest, in the desert, out in the ocean. I was back in nature. I was a little kid lying in a grass field, and those types of experiences. And so for me, there is this relationship between those pure sounds that come from one instrument, handmade instrument, a drum, something like a didgeridoo, a rattle, and a shaker, that is a primordial sound that we all are familiar with. We're just disconnected from. And so the sound healing has a way of kind of putting us back in touch with our primary senses and these primordial experiences that I think are in every human, in every human being, right? They're etched in us.
It's almost a desire to have this, and yet I think we don't usually know where to turn to have this experience. And
Sure.
I mean, there's so much lack of harmony today, and I'm glad that you keep mentioning nature. I want to show something right now, to show you and your group in action. Let's take a look. We're going to take a look in a couple of seconds. And I noticed too that, you do them all over, but a lot of them are on the beach. I saw one in a beautiful nature setting that I'd never seen before in Miami, a forest. It looked like some kind of a forest.
Waterfalls and lagoons. Yeah.
So the sounds of nature are important, but even being with nature, so much of your work takes place right there on the ocean, doesn't it? Right along the ocean.
It sure does. I like to to explain my sound healing model as an ecosystem-based sound healing model. And that it's geared towards the ecosystem with which we are in, right? And working with it and understanding what it is that, you know, provides life, that provided life forever in this particular ecosystem, right? And what is that vibrational frequency of this ecosystem, and where is it that we're connected to it as a local culture here, and what are we missing from it? And then I try to close that gap and fill that gap. And so tuning in, using instruments that are actually made and from this ecosystem. So I make a lot of my own instruments, and they're actually made from local native trees and whatnot. And so they do carry the feel, the vibrational frequency and sound of this ecosystem. So, I mean, I don't know how else to kind of describe it. Now, if you took me out of here and you put me in another environment, I usually I have to adapt, because the people in those areas might need something different. There might be a different energy source in terms of nature. It might be mountains, it might be a river, I don't know. So, like, you know, it's funny because you see a lot of sound healers today, and there's just an explosion, and a lot of them
good. It's good, right? In a sense,
it's very good. There's been a lot of pros to that because there's a lot more exposure. But then there's also then that creates a situation where we also need a lot more training, and people need a lot more awareness.
So I want to talk about that, but I want to take a look at a video. If we could maybe go to it right now.
Sure.
Okay. Oh, good. Start again. Great.
I said, this is really wonderful. And so I started to cultivate a practice that had to do with people coming together as a group with a very specific intention. And over the last 10 years, really worked at developing that. And I said, how do we take it? How do we train people, regular people, everyday people? They were not musicians before they started doing this. All of them come from such a wide background. They have certifications in everything you can imagine. Speak different languages, different backgrounds, architects, lawyers, computer analysts. That's important, that this is something that is accessible. That's what this is about. It's about recapturing and reclaiming sound for the everyday person and having them use it for their own good. It's something that we are working to integrate into all facets of our lives. And so that's what the Miami Sound Institute is really about.
Outdoors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jared,
so this was down in the Redlands at a place called Home, just south of Miami. There's a big waterfall and lagoon, and I produce a monthly or every other month. I produce a day event there that's sound healing and swimming and static dance, and it's really wonderful.
Jared, you're all over the place, aren't you? Are you always in search of a new, I say venue, but a new environment, a new place to be able to bring these events to?
Sure. I've been doing these events, I've been doing sound healing for so many years. And so, over the last 5 years, it just started to get really popular. And from there, I began teaching, and then I started to, really just build a much bigger and robust sound healing experience by using my students, and then just building the South Beach Sound Healing Orchestra that's, sometimes can be 15 to 20 sound healers. So we're able to really do a sound healing experience that is much more profound, and also with much more people. So as you saw, we had a few hundred people there at the event that we did with you.
Yeah.
And so this has just kind of been the case lately, that we're able to, we're just producing our own events, and we're drawing a few hundred people, and the more bodies that you have for a sound healing experience, the more energy you have access to. So if you have 10 people there, you could potentially tap into a lot more. It could be a much deeper and profound experience. The problem is that usually if you do a sound healing inside, then you have control. It's much more contained, and it's easier. One person could do a sound healing for 50 people, and it could be a really good experience. When you start to get outside and in these natural locations, so we do it at the beach, we do it at these busy festivals, we'll do it, outside. And so to really create the container and that resonant field with all the bodies, it's a process. And so it's something I've been doing for many years, and we've figured out how to get a large group of bodies to the space and place where they can actually receive a sound healing. So we're talking about getting everybody centered, getting everybody to move, getting everybody to lay down and relax, and having the environment secure and not have any noise. It's quite a feat. And so we've been able to really pull it off. And when you can pull that off, then you have 200 or 300 bodies. And I have sound healers that are very orchestrated throughout the whole, so everybody's covered. You basically are enveloped in this, this field of sound, and it's extremely powerful. The more bodies, people have profound experiences coming out of those sessions, and it ranges from everything you could imagine. People having some kind of ailment that they literally could feel the release of that ailment happening, or having a flashback right back to their own births, past life stuff. All sorts of things. People come to me all the time with something, and I'm just like, that's wonderful. That is so cool. Thank you for sharing. I'm always asking for feedback, because I don't know what's happening on my end. On their end, I only know what I'm doing, right?
And you're directing. You are the director, and you are a director and a writer. I think you also have been a producer. Your degree was actually in writing, right? So
yeah, I've been an educator. Yeah, I have a master's degree in creative writing and in education, and I've been an educator for 30 years. So I still currently work in the university. I do still have a day job. So I work at Barry University. Yeah, I am what you call an instructional designer. So I design learning experiences. I train faculty, I create courses. And so that experience I have married with my sound healing experience to create the Miami Sound Institute. So I have a very robust kind of teaching and learning system that's experiential, and that has basically produced the South Beach Sound Healing Orchestra. So it's really exciting.
Like you are doing work that was really, really meant for you to do, that you're doing something that not just makes you feel good, but, when you're helping others and you're doing something, do you find yourself, I'm sure there is some stress to all that you do, because I see you're all over the place doing things and everything, and you've got your day job, but how would you describe it? Like fulfilling your work, or energizing, or just challenging, or what?
Yeah, it's extremely fulfilling. I've been doing this for so long, and I never thought that the culture would be ready for this. I was always taking sound healing and integrating it into my work environments, and to really everything that I was doing. But I was never calling it sound healing, because that term wasn't even around when I started doing this stuff. I originally started using sound when I was teaching poetry to homeless teenagers that were living in youth shelters. And I started to use the drum, and it produced such a profound impact on them. And they wrote this incredible poetry, and then I landed in like the governor's mansion on the news, like playing the drum with these teenagers reading their poetry. And it was like, that was my first formal experience as a teacher and as someone using the sound. And basically everything that I've done since then, I've integrated sound into. But it was always on the fringes. It was like mainstream culture wasn't ready for this stuff, meditation and yoga and all this stuff. And then I'd say in the mid like 2000s, with the advent of social media, and people started to, yoga studios started to pop up, meditation started to happen. And suddenly people were coming to these spaces and places with the intention of meditation and healing and relaxing. And so when I saw this, I was like, wow, this is really wonderful, because I've been doing it the hard way. And like, I've been doing it in situations where nobody is coming or has that intention. But I was doing it, and I was pulling it off. And so once I saw people coming together, then I said, well, this is great, because I've already been doing this. And if I go into like a studio and people are coming for an event, I can give them the most incredible experience, because this is easy. I mean, this is the easiest thing I've ever done, right?
Yeah.
And so then I started to be able to develop an actual, sound healing experience and model where sound was at the center of what was happening, as opposed to the periphery and just being used as a tool to teach other subject matter and whatnot. And so that it's been wonderful to see. Then fast forward 10 or 15 years, now we're talking about mainstream. Nobody would have ever thought that we would hit mainstream the way that we have. And we've hit mainstream in terms of the mainstream now has access and is yearning for things like meditation and sound healing and yoga and acupuncture and all these ancient practices. And why are we all of a sudden yearning? Because, well, I think we've hit some walls as a culture. We're over-teched. We're inundated with the barrage of news and information that our systems are fleeing, right? We're in disease, right? We're breaking down. And so I think we hit some walls. And then of course there was the pandemic, and that helped push people, I think, inward, and started to, ask questions like, what am I doing with my life? How am I taking care of myself? And so I think that was those couple things were a perfect combination, a perfect storm for what I'm doing now in terms of like the mainstream culture being open to this stuff, wants to learn it, needs it, wants to use it. And now I feel like it's become full circle for me, because I'm training people, and they're not musicians, they're everyday regular people, and now they're using sound in their lives, and they're taking it back into the workplace, they're taking it into their schools, into their churches, into the hospitals, so for me that was always the goal, because that was where I started this stuff, and that's where I always thought it should be, as opposed to in some studio, in some space, in some place that is disconnected. And so for me, that's been kind of really nice to share it with other people, so they can share it with their families and communities. And, you asked about how does that feel when you're holding space? I mean, I do this so much, but what's been better for me is sharing that space of providing this incredible healing experience for hundreds of people, but sharing it with others. And then really taking joy in it. And those are my
So you must be getting up every day and just saying, oh my God, what can I do today to help people? And that has to be a great feeling, to know that what at the beginning, like you say, wasn't so accepted, or you weren't really being invited yet as you are now. So it's interesting you say this, because I went to a birthday party a while ago, and what did they have? They had somebody doing the sound bowls, and they had this, and that was, they had like a whole little presentation. And I thought, a few years ago, you wouldn't have this at somebody's birthday lunch,
No way.
And I thought,
that's right.
Life has changed. People would prefer to have this than, So I wanted to ask you about these people that you're training, because I saw that day there was, a slew of people that were walking around doing all kinds of things. And my eyes were closed part of the time, and I opened them to see what was going on. So can you tell me about the training? I mean, do people come for a week?
So those students they've been training with me, most of them between a year and a half to 2 years. So right now I have 3 levels of training, right? I start off with a level 1. It's a weekend immersion. This is kind of an introduction. You have this powerful weekend of a whole variety of sound healing experiences. You get to get your hands on different, you learn about all the different instruments, you learn about my model, the modality. And then from there, I have a level 2 that is a 6-week training, and then a level 3 that is a 6-month training. And so once you go through the initial training and you start a level 2 training with me, then you gain access to the South Beach Sound Healing Orchestra, right? And so that is the practicum for all my students. So as we're doing classes and training, they are coming to all the events that I'm doing, assisting me and learning the ropes, literally learning how to hold space. I mean, it's a powerful learning model. And I don't know how else anyone can really learn you can't really learn sound healing without doing it. And so it can take years, and you have to cultivate holding space, whether it's for one person or for a whole group of people. And this takes time. There are, even my most advanced students, they're just scratching the surface. And myself, I've been doing it for 30 years. I'm just scratching the surface. It's a lifetime of stuff. There's so many aspects to sound healing. It's the relationship that you have with just one instrument, for starters, and how you cultivate that yourself and how that impacts you, right? That's just one aspect of it. Then there's a whole bunch of other instruments. And then there's, you understanding the energetics of a group of people or one person. But that all starts with understanding your own system and your own flow, and when you're on and when you're off, and what you need to do on yourself in order for you to stay balanced, and utilizing sound and breath. Breath work is a very important aspect. Breath work and movement are 2 fundamental aspects of my system.
Sounds to me like there's no end, Jared, to what you teach. It's not like a week you teach everything and you're done. They're done. So if anybody,
it's a process.
We could go on all day, and I love hearing what you have to say. If anyone is interested in all of the work you do, maybe go to Miami Sound Institute.
They can go to Miami Sound Institute or jaredbistrong.com. I'm on social media and Instagram. I'm very active with the Miami Sound Institute, the South Beach Sound Healing Orchestra, and then my own account, Jared Bistrong, which is Digital Caveman. And so all of those accounts, I'm consistently I'm posting all of my events, and I also have a newsletter, so you can join my newsletter on my webpage. So I send out a regular email of all my events, and I have a training coming up in a few weeks, in June 9th, 10th, and 11th. I have a level 1 weekend sound healing immersion training.
So if anyone out there feels they've got the potential, and I don't think it's really about talent. It sounds to me it's about wanting to do this. I'm sure there's some talent involved to do this. I mean, what you do, but
yes, yeah. I have like I said, my students now, they are out there holding their own events. They work with me. The majority of them had no experience with an instrument prior to starting, and so it's not like, again, it's different. It's different. So what they have done is cultivated these spaces, these healing spaces within themselves, and then that becomes what they can provide to the public. Yes.
Well, Jared, we're out of time here, but actually we're over time, but that's great. I'm so glad that I stayed that night, and it was a lesson to me. Sometimes when you feel like leaving, not that I wanted to leave, but like I said, that tired feeling at the end of the day, and don't, because you never know if you're going to have an experience like I did, And here we're going to end on this video right here, or picture. I think this is a picture, right? On the beach, sound healing on the beach, right?
Yes, we do. We do a Friday morning sunrise sound healing every Friday. So it's a donation-based class. It happens on 3rd Street down by the water. That's my main practicum for my students. So I'm on there every Friday, and then I'll have a few students come out every now and then. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not, but that happens every Friday, 7:30 on 3rd Street. So it's a wonderful way to start the weekend.
So that's for anyone. Anyone can attend that, right? Anyone?
Yeah. That's a public event. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, great. Good to know.
Yeah. It's donation based, so you can.
Oh, okay. You just Yeah.
You don't have to sign up. You just show
You
up.
don't, you just show up. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. This is these are my students. This was an event we did actually inside. So you can see they're all holding didgeridoos there. That's one of my principal instruments that we use. This is
Look at that.
Faena.
Look at that. At the Faena. Oh.
Yeah, this is at the Faena Hotel, which is like I'm pretty much a resident sound healer there. We do a monthly full moon at the Faena Hotel on the full moon out on the beach. It's wonderful. We usually have 100 to 200 people.
We better end on that note. It is just a pleasure getting to interview you and learn more about what you do. And I just wanted to end with one thing: is your vision. It's a pretty big vision that you'd like to bring your whole sound healing to a venue in South Florida. Tell them.
You mean my bigger vision that I shared
Your
at the
big
event?
vision. I read it.
Yes, I've been saying this for years. We come together as in large groups to do everything, yell and scream and shop and all this stuff. And so I think there's a movement where we're going to come together as a big group to do with intention to do something like, meditate and relax and receive a sound healing. And so I've been saying for years, one day we're going to be doing this during the halftime Super Bowl show.
I love it. Things like that can really
halftime
change
show.
the world. That's
Yes.
about real change. It's a pleasure getting to see you.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much, Meredith.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Okay.
And I also would like to thank our technical director, Amar, who is always busy around the station. And when she's not doing things at the station, at the center, at the meditation center, the Brahma Kumari Center, she's helping children and families as a pediatrician.